So Namsa, who is here with us today as the tech person, is a product of having the Sangha, with the South African devotees, with South African Vaishnavis. So thank you. So it's for them, really, that we're offering this service.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to serve you in your service to them. So I just so deeply appreciate Rajalila Prabhu's humongous heart, as you all know, and have been touched by it. It's just so big and all encompassing. And just to have a little room in it is just really so sheltering and hope giving. And so a quick request, if possible. I know that for some of you, due to time differences, as well as potentially being at work or anything, it might be difficult for you, or it might not be possible to turn on your video. But if it is possible, it would be really lovely to see your lovely face. So if that's possible, please feel free to do so. And if not, no problem. So thank you so much for the introduction, Rajalila. And today, when I was thinking about what perhaps I could share about, I thought immediately to the power of listening. And the reason why I fell to that was, this is something that I've tried really hard and continue to try to become better at. And as a coach, this is my bread and butter. This is the place that I live in terms of listening, constantly listening. And so I feel as though we can never be good enough listeners, and there's always something more to learn, and there's always nuances and deeper discoveries in our own relationship with listening. And so that's really what I'd like for us to dive into today. For some of you, you may be mentors or are being mentored by others. And I would really encourage you to think about what we talk about and the experiences you have, even within that context, because I think that might help in your own deepening and ability to listen. So just with that little preface, we'll start off by this, and that is, what do you think listening means? We use so many words in our language, in our day-to-day lives, and we just kind of go about it. And what's interesting is that we all have different definitions based on how we've been raised and what we've been exposed to. So we'll just take 2 or 3 definitions or experiences of what you might think listening is. And you can either feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'm happy to read them out loud, or else you can unmute yourself and please speak up. What is listening?
This is Snaza. Haribo.
Haribo.
I think listening is a concerted effort to hear someone, and not just what they're saying with their words, but what they mean by their body language, the connotations of what they're trying to say.
I really love that you brought up a really important nuance already, and that is, listening is much more than the words that somebody speaks, that it can be the body language, the unspoken nuances, whether it be a tone of voice, or whether it be the energy that you can see go through their own body. And so that affects listening. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Really wonderful. Anita, you had said hearing for what is important to another and acknowledging that. Wonderful. I really like that. Now we're going a little bit deeper. So there's 2 parts to listening, and that's at least what I got out of what you had said, Anita. And that is, one is that we're receiving, right? And that is hearing what is important to another, and then that acknowledgement. So perfect. I had seen somebody had raised their hand.
Yes, Hare Krishna, it's Bhavita.
Bhavita, please.
I think just to add on to Snazo's point, I think it's also important to gauge, does listening in terms of, does the person want advice or are they just venting? So based off of that, then you'll know what to pick up on, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That there are different ways that people hope to be listened to. So you brought up two. One is for advice, a very solution-oriented way of acknowledgement, or the other is venting or just sharing one's heart. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Two others in the chat. So Hari Pranapriya wrote, giving someone your ears without judging them, but freely expressing themselves. Oh, I love that visual of giving someone your ears. It makes it a gift. And I think that really is what listening, that energy behind listening is all about. It's a gift that we offer to someone else. And another one, being present and making someone feel that they have your time and attention. Beautiful, really beautiful. Yes. So from all of these, I think what we can get is that there's two components to listening. One is the actual reception of what somebody has to offer, and then making sure that it's being interpreted properly. So that interpretation could be it might require asking questions to your point, Bhavitha, of are you looking for a solution, or would you just like me to hear what you're saying, right? So it can involve a myriad of things. And one of the things that we will explore today is asking questions. So thank you all so much for just these beautiful offerings. And clearly already so many of you know what are some of these essential components to listening. So that's beautiful. One of the places that I think we can take the greatest inspiration from in terms of listening is from within the Gita. And for those of us, and maybe we can do just a quick either show of hands, or you can just raise your hand even. How many have had a chance to read or hear about the Gita? Okay, so I think definitely quite a few. So perfect. So for those who may not be familiar, and I feel like it's everybody. So I'm going to go with everybody. And if not, please let me know somehow. Say in the chat, please explain more, and I would be happy to. But within the Gita, we are coming into a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And you may have noticed, and it took me several readings of the Gita to actually recognize this, that the entire first chapter of the Gita is just Arjuna speaking. Have you noticed that? Krishna barely says anything. It's almost like, to borrow from Shakespeare, it's a soliloquy. You know, there's nobody else. It isn't really a conversation. It's Arjuna just pouring his heart out and really coming to his own conclusions. And it's towards the very, very end, and especially at the beginning of chapter 2, that Krishna just says a couple of things. He just says a couple of things. And Arjuna continues to speak, and he continues to speak and continues to speak until in the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter, Arjuna says, I am bewildered and I'm confused and I don't know the way forward. I surrender to you. And essentially what he does in saying that is he gives Krishna permission to speak. And until Krishna is being given permission, what he does is he simply listens. He simply listens. And I go back to this over and over and over again. In the Nectar of Instruction, a beautiful, beautiful book, it speaks in the first verse of how there are 3 parts to us that, if controlled, can help us become a sober person or a person of wisdom. And one of those is controlling the tongue. And there are 2 parts to controlling the tongue. One is in eating, tasting, you know, perhaps like me, you might struggle with that. Everything tastes good. I want to eat it, right? Sometimes it's hard to portion control. And the second, if not just as voracious, is the urge to speak. And that urge to speak comes up, and just starting to notice that in conversation with others, when you're trying to listen to somebody else, how strong is this urge to speak? How strong is it? Just bringing awareness to that is already going to help us recognize whether or not we are truly giving us, and again, going back to, and forgive me, I forgot who mentioned it and coined it, but it was so beautiful, giving us the gift of our ears to somebody else. I saw somebody else in the chat. Okay. Oh my goodness, I resonate with this so much. Yes, me too. It's amazing, right? And in some ways, it's, unless we've been so lucky to be raised in such an intentional environment, we haven't been grown up or brought up in a culture of just listening, right? We tend to immediately offer a solution, or we can autobiographize, oh yes, this also happened to me, or something like this happened to me, right? And we forget that sometimes all that somebody really needs, and I'd love for us to think about it in this way, offering the gift of our ears, being an instrument to truly listen, is a powerful, powerful gift we can offer to someone in terms of healing. That is what most people are really looking for, to be heard. That is it. The solution isn't necessarily something that is offered. It is in being received. And so to be an instrument of reception is already a way to help somebody heal. So I would like for us to start off today perhaps by turning the tables. And when we think about listening, we often think about listening to others, listening to someone else. And I'd like for us to, and we'll take maybe the next 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll take your permission to guide you in a meditation. And what we're going to do is we are going to take some time to listen to ourselves. Because in order to be able to listen to others, it makes it very difficult if we don't offer the space to listen to ourselves. We live such hectic, chaotic lives. There's so many influences. There's so many things that are constantly grabbing our attention, that it's equally important to listen to what the body, the heart, and the mind is telling us, as opposed to just reacting to them constantly. And so, with that, I'll invite all of you. You can keep your video on. You can turn your video off, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Often for meditations, people are like, are you going to be looking at me? That seems weird. So if you would prefer to turn your video off, go for it. And you can just do this meditation sitting up. You can also do it if you prefer lying down, but I do warn you, you might fall asleep, because we will close our eyes. And what the purpose of this meditation, and I'll guide you through it, what we will be doing is just listening to what our body is telling us. There's so much information that our body is constantly giving to us that we may ignore, we may delay, or we may avoid. And so we'll start off by just doing that. And so go ahead, make yourself comfortable. If you're seated on the ground, you can sit cross-legged. If you would prefer to sit in a chair, as I'm doing, feel free to do that as well. You can plant both your feet on the floor. Just taking in a deep inhale. Exhale slowly. closing the eyes softly. You can place your palms on your knees, your palms facing upwards, and just try to keep the back a little bit straight in line with the neck and the head. And just taking in deep inhales and exhales here, offering the entire body the nourishment of prana, of fresh energy, fresh air. And we'll start off by just doing a short body scan. And if you've never done a body scan before, no problem. All you need to do is simply follow the prompts that I'll offer. So you can start by bringing your awareness to your right foot, toes to heel. The right foot is still. And to the left foot is stable. Into the entire right leg, from the toes, ankle, calf, knee, thigh, all the way to the right hip girdle. The entire right leg is rigid. From the toes all the way up to the left hip girdle. The left leg is immovable. To the pelvic floor, the front of the pelvis, the glutes, and the lower back. The pelvic floor is cemented. Into the entire spine, which is completely still. To the right hand, fingertips to wrist. The right hand is frozen. And to the left hand, which is solid. To the entire right arm, fingertips past the wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, all the way up to the right shoulder blade. The right arm is steady. Into the entire left arm, which is rigid. Now to the neck, which is immovable. And the head, which is completely still. Bring your awareness now to the entire body. The entire body is grounded, just like a statue. As the body relaxes into stillness, we'll now bring our awareness to the breath at the entrance of the nostrils. The yogis recognize that by stilling the body, we start to calm the mind. And as the mind calms, when we attach it to the breath, the mind starts to stay in the present moment. It's not jumping back and forth into the past or the future, but it's here, right now. So, noticing the breath at the entrance of the nostrils, Just observe it as a witness, resisting any urge, should it occur, to alter or change the breath. Sensitizing the breath further still, I'd like you to see if you can notice the temperature fluctuation of the breath at the entrance of the nostrils. The incoming breath is slightly cooler. The outgoing breath, warmed by your body's heat, is slightly warmer. Observing and experiencing this now. Excellent. I'd like you now to bring your awareness into the body. And as you do so, I'd like you to notice the temperature of the room that you're in. Is it hot? Is it cold? Are you comfortable? Bringing your awareness now to noticing if you're experiencing any hunger, satisfaction, or fullness. Are you thirsty? Or are you feeling satisfied? Your thirst being quenched? Taking your awareness from the top of your head, slowly all the way down to your toes. Notice what parts or part of the body feel relaxed and which carry some tension. Doing that once more. Where in the body is there a sense of ease? And where is there a sense of discomfort? Are you feeling a sense of drowsiness, a sense of alertness, or something in between? And reflecting again on any of those questions or wanting to go back to a particular part of the body, just explore it a little bit further. Take the next few moments to do so. I'll invite you now to once again bring your awareness to the breath at the entrance of the nostrils. Again, just observing and witnessing each inhalation and exhalation. We'll slowly start to break the stillness in the body. And gently move your fingertips, your toes, rotating your wrists and your ankles, moving the head from side to side and back to center. And taking in a deep inhale here. Exhale. And whenever you're ready, you can blink the eyes open. Excellent. So what I'd like for us all to do now is we'll explore this in a couple of ways. So I'd request everyone, since most of you already have, to turn your video off. And I'd like you to rename yourself. You'll go to the 3 dots at the top of your picture and go to rename, and you can just write in AN, which stands for anonymous. You can perhaps see how I've done that for myself. And when everybody gets a chance to do that, fantastic. We have a few people who've done that already. And we'll just wait for everybody else. And just make sure to turn off your video. So that's part of it as well. And you can turn off your video by once again going to those 3 dots, and it will say turn off video. And for those who may not be able to do this, no problem. It's fine. If you don't mind, your name will show up. So what we will be doing is we will take the next 2 to 3 minutes to just write down what your experience was in the chat. What was your experience in the chat? Was there, and I'll offer some questions, was there anything that surprised you as you were listening? We were listening to our bodies, we were thinking, we were prompted by numerous questions. What stood out for you the most? Were you surprised? Or did you expect everything that you experienced?
For me, it was a very good meditation. I kind of felt sleepy, and in between, I don't know if I'm sleeping but I'm following your directions. So it was a very good meditation for me. I don't know if I'm
Wonderful.
audible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I love the enthusiasm. So we'll go back and we will also share vocally
What?
in person. But we'll start off by just kind of just allowing any and all thoughts. You can just put them in the chat. Just make sure that it's sent to everyone, which I think it's already defaulted to. So a couple of things already are in the chat. Someone said, I struggle with meditation. I already do so. Um, and just if you've written something down, since you're on anonymous, nobody will know if you continue to write. So feel free to write anything and anything that comes up in terms of what did you find out by listening to yourself. So we'll give it one more minute. And so if there's anything else anybody would like to write in the chat, please feel free to do so. And if you haven't had an opportunity to, please feel free to go ahead and read what others have written. Okay, and so if there's anything else anybody else would like to add, please do so. And if not, you can, first of all, rename yourself and then turn your video on. Let's say start video. And if you are not able to join us by video, then just please put yourself back to your name. There's just some really, really beautiful sharings that are in the chat. Just really, really beautiful. Just really, wow. Thank you for opening your hearts. This is an exercise that a friend of mine had offered to me and that we had done together. And I wanted to try it out here, because very often what happens is in settings like this, even though there is such a beautiful atmosphere and culture of sharing, there are times where we're not sure how our hearts will be received, or sometimes we feel a little bit more shy. And by putting ourselves as anonymous and then just writing whatever comes to us, others get the benefit of it. And at the same time, we can feel safe, really. That's the best way I can put it. So just really, really, really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So before I go into the chat and just pull out a couple of things that I noticed, just based on what was written on the chat or based on your own personal experience, if anybody would like to share something that was surprising or something that really touched them, please feel free to do so. Just give that space.
Vrindavan, I just want you to note that there's some people that are saying they can't disable the anonymous.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Okay, so let me just go back and say, so if you see these 3 dots, you'll go back to rename. That's what you have to press, rename, and then it will give you an option to type back in your name again. And let me know if that is helpful. Okay, I see somebody just rename themselves.
Yeah, just to say, if you're on your phone, they can just press on participants and press on themselves, and then there'll be a prompt to say rename if they're on Zoom on their phone.
Thank you so much, Bhavita. I didn't even realize that others might be on their phones. So I deeply appreciate your awareness of that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And the same, I believe, for iPad. You'll need to go to participants and then from there. Not sure where the dots are. Okay. If you can see my screen, I don't know if you can see my pointing, my clicking. Can everybody see my clicking? Since I am a host, I'm not sure. So there are 3 dots here. And then I would go to rename. I'm not sure if that's visible. I hope so. And if anybody's still having trouble, please let us know. Thank you, Rajalila Prabhu, for bringing that to our attention. I think there's only 2 people who haven't been able to do so. Otherwise, everybody else has gotten back. So yes, any realizations that came up that you would like to share that surprised you by listening to your body?
I think Haribo. This is Snaz. I think the thing, every time I do a body scan, I'm always so surprised at how much you pick up from the body, that you're always within this body, but at the same time not always listening to it. So I'm always so surprised at how much more you can feel and hear and be in tune with when you take the time to actually listen.
Thank you so much for that really beautiful realization. I experienced the same thing for myself. It's amazing. There's just so much information that's there. And as you beautifully put it, we're embodied, we live in this body and yet can be so unaware of what it's saying to us. Yes. Bhavita, please.
I realized that I do struggle with meditation. I think my mind is always pacing. So instead of focusing on the meditation, I need to focus on kind of calming my mind down. And also, just adding on to Snazo's comment of, you don't really listen to your body. I think for myself, sometimes you get so used to the discomfort of your body that it just becomes a part of you. So even if there is an issue, it's normal because you kind of just, get used to the discomfort. So I think once you silence everything, then you can pick up on things. Like someone said in the comments, they didn't realize they were thirsty until you mentioned, are you thirsty? And it's something so basic, but so important.
Oh, thank you so much for bringing that up. I am currently thirsty. I have a water bottle here and I am still not drinking from it. I mean, it's amazing. And we'll see how that for some of us, there is such a heightened attunement to such things. And this is where we're all so different. And it's our nature and our conditioning that makes us so unique that we're very aware of it. And for others, it's a little less to you can almost call it a blind spot for others. I'm a person who, it's not uncommon for me that I need to use the bathroom and I'll wait 6 hours to use the bathroom because I am engrossed in something. I'm already doing something. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yes. Bonolo, I hope I pronounced that right. And please feel free to correct me.
Hi, Hare Krishna. Yeah, you said it. My name is Malo. Yeah, I've been having technical difficulty, but I caught the first part of the meditation. I usually do body scans, but for me, because I'm a movement practitioner, so I've done a lot of body scans in my life, and the when you there's a very fine line between the consciousness of the body into like the physical, that when you kind of get used to scanning your body and seeing where am I missing something or how do I feel physical wise, like physically, if I'm tired or something, and then you get to a place where you kind of then scan your heart, and then I think the other one is just you kind of feel like, oh, I haven't eaten carrots in a while. I think my body needs this, you know? So for me, it's very interesting every single time.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And I'm sure as a movement practitioner, you're well, you're extremely familiar with this. What I really, really appreciated from what you said is that it still surprises you every time. And I think that is realization. You know, we often hear that at least I'm very guilty of this. For many years, I thought I was a pretty aware person. And it's only when I start to bring awareness that I realize how unaware I am. So the more that you practice something, the more you start to see how much I'm missing. And so the body is an excellent example of that, an excellent example. Now, we stopped at a body scan. You can also do this as an emotional scan. What are the feelings? What are the energetic emotions that are happening? You can also continue this to going into a head scan of like, what are the repeating thoughts and stories and patterns that are coming up over and over and over again. But the basic is we have this container of the body. We have the container. And when we are able to listen and honor that container, then it gives the ability to catch and really start to recognize with more clarity what is happening in the heart and then what is happening in the head. And so that's why just for today, with the time that we have, I really wanted to start off with the body. And if is there anybody else who would like to offer anything and from their realizations? Really beautiful. So appreciate it. If not, I wanted to just offer some observations that I saw within the chat. And that is, I saw many people saying that I struggle with meditation, that I'm not good at this, or this is difficult for me, and there's so much I struggle. And on one hand, I feel this is so much the quality of your humility that is coming there, and on the other hand, there's also a sense of judgment, right? And so this is now we're moving into the more subtler part of listening, right? So on one hand, we're experiencing and we start to notice and we start to pay attention to and listen to what the body is telling us. But then based on what we've heard, it's, I think, equally important to see how we react to that information that has just come up. That is also an important part of listening. Does that make sense? Right. And so if you see this now, there was, and I'm extremely guilty of this myself, so I do this all the time, but this was just to bring some awareness to just notice. And again, please go back into the chat. And if you were the one who wrote this, this is in no way, please don't take this as a judgment. We all do this, but just to notice, wow, how do I treat myself when I feel as though I'm not X, Y, Z, right? I'm not good at meditation. I struggle with my mind. I can't believe I didn't realize that I was thirsty, right? There's immediately a sense of condemnation. There's a sense of really a lack of compassion. that's what I would offer there, right? And that is why it's so important to offer this space of listening to ourselves. How can we offer compassion and space to others when we're not offering that to ourselves? Because so much of the listening that we do to others gets colored by our own inner experiences and our own inner narratives. And it's just as important as we work on the external part of listening, of, asking questions, active listening, ensuring our own body language shows the other that we're engaged. We hear a lot about that, empathic listening, right? That's all very externally focused. It's all very externally focused. But that internal listening is just so, so, so important. And I think that as whether we are in a position of being a mentor, a guide, just a friend, a basic, just a kind human being, we often think of accountability in terms of especially in a mentor-mentee relationship, that, oh, my mentee needs to be accountable to me in so many ways. But there's also this piece of being accountable to someone else, right? And I would offer to you that this piece of inner listening is the way in which we hold ourselves accountable to other people. And that when we hold ourselves accountable to carving out the time, somebody had mentioned that, right? That I don't have time. This takes time. Even though it was 15 minutes, it was 15 minutes of your day. You could have been doing something else with those 15 minutes. But to actually spend that time to see, to recognize, I mean, it came as a shock. It's crazy. I've known this, but it came as a shock to me that it can take me anywhere from 2 to 6 hours to go to the bathroom after my body is telling me you should go to the bathroom. It came as a shock. You would think that this is just so obvious, but bringing that awareness, starting to actually listen is where we can start to become better listeners to ourselves and to others. Okay, I profusely apologize. I would love to say your name properly, and I know I will not. So to who raised their hand, I'm not sure if they're on the call anymore, though. Yes, you are. Okay, please teach me how to pronounce your name.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
My name is Bongile.
Sorry, how do I pronounce your name?
Sibongile. So when you would kind of say it together, it goes, it's not a good example, but it kind of flows into one as opposed to saying it in a staccato manner like that.
It's so beautiful. It's really, really so beautiful. Okay, I can't hear much. Okay, please, you had your...
Perhaps I'm speaking a bit low. Yes, so I wanted to just share 2 things that came into my mind when you were speaking. The first thing was when you were saying about yourself, when you generally wait hours before you relieve yourself. It's funny, a close friend of mine would often say, even just going to the bathroom is a form of self-care. And she'd be like, friends, just make sure you do that, like baby steps. So, and then the second thing is, oh gosh, that the thing of listening, I think I definitely was meant to be here this evening. It's something one struggles with. But what I wanted to say was, my boss is someone who, has like such incredible listening as a person. I find it so interesting. She listens, she does active listening without judgment. And she's someone who's so busy, like I guess you could say she has a like a high position at work and on the region, in the African region. But she's so intentional about her time, and she's very structured, and she literally leaves time maybe between her meetings as buffer time for when people may come into her office, to give people that amount of time to listen to them, to answer any questions that, you know, a person may have. And I really respect that about her. And I see what a power it actually is. So it's really great that you're sharing this.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And what's incredible when I hear you speak is it's rare to find examples of deep intentional listening, and to be on the receiving end of that, and then to also see somebody model it. It also helps to keep that fire alive, to aspire to do the same for others. So thank you so much. Yeah, it's so blessed that you have somebody, and especially in the workplace, which is often the last place that we experience this, and the place where we need it the most, to be modeling that and to have that be offered to you. So really, really beautiful. I would love to actually just open it up now for questions. If anybody has any questions about what we've spoken about, what you experienced, or anything else related to this topic of listening, we'll keep the next 20-25 minutes open for questions. Yes, Himangi Gopi.
Hi Krishna, thank you so much. It was very, very amazing experience. And like, I would like to share some small experience, not from this day, but it's related. Like a couple of years ago, I saw there is one devotee who was also giving some workshop, and then one psychiatrist also came. So she said that she's so stressed out because all these people are coming, and she needs also some relaxation or something. And he was also giving some kind of massage. So he told her, lay down on your hips, turn on your hips, and then relax your body. And then she said, I did it. And he said, no, you did not. She said, yes, I trust me, I did it. He said, no, because your leg is in the air. She said, oh my God, I'm not aware of that. So then I realized, oh my God, we are really, most of the time, we are not aware of our body, what to say, our emotions, our thoughts, other people. It's so difficult. So just like a question is, why is so difficult to be aware even of our body, what to say of Krishna or something? Yeah.
What a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is something I think about very often that Prabhupada, I've heard has said, and that is, Prabhupada said, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. And I hang on to that really tightly. I hang on to that really, really tightly, because it can be so easy in the exuberance of practicing bhakti to, I need to be really Krishna conscious. And I always think, wow, Prabhupada was so practical, so practical, right? So why is it so difficult to be aware? I think there are numerous reasons why. I can offer perhaps one that comes to mind immediately for me. And that is because the senses are constantly being overstimulated and constantly reacting with so many sense objects. You know, in the time that we live in, it's a constant bombardment of information, right? That's sensory overload, right? And that sensory overload is one, fueling more desires within our consciousness, right? That's one piece. And it prevents us from actually being able to, we start to actually, I'll speak very personally. I start to derive almost like an enjoyment of being constantly bombarded, by sense objects, by information, whether it's through sight, through sound, through taste, through touch, through whatever, right? And we hear within the 8 limbs of yoga that the 5th stage, pratyahara, or withdrawal of the senses, is actually so important for the yoga, for the bhakti practitioner, right? And it's the number one reason why many of us struggle to meditate. It's the reason why we struggle to even be still for more than a couple of seconds, because the desires in the mind cause activity within the body, and it takes away our awareness. It, you know, the analogy within the Gita, which is so beautiful, is of the tortoise, right, which withdraws in its limbs. Right? It's such a beautiful visual to think of. How often am I intentionally withdrawing in my senses? And I think as we intentionally practice that as part of our sadhana, then it becomes easier to become aware of what is actually going on. There's already plenty going on within our microorganism of this human body that is comprised of senses, mind, intelligence, false ego, and soul. There's lots going on. There's plenty that we don't actually need more from the outside. And yet that is where we find pleasure for some crazy reason, right? And so when we can withdraw, we can actually become conscious of what's happening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I hope that's a little bit helpful.
Yes, it's very helpful.
Rajalila Prabhu, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I'm just appreciating listening to you, listening to your sharing and listening to what the devotees are also sharing with you. Thank you, Hemangi, for the question.
Yes, thank you, Hemangi. Okay, so we have 2 other hands up. So Bhavika, perhaps you can go first, and Snazova afterwards, please.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to ask, do you think the difficulty in listening to ourselves affects our japa? Because, you know, the way I see it, japa is a form of meditation. So does it affect that? And what are the practical ways to begin really like honing in and really listening and being in tune with ourselves? Because I know there's a tendency to focus on the end results, but how do we take that first step? And I understand that it will definitely be a long process, but how do we start?
How do we start? Really beautiful question. 2 questions. I believe your first question was on does listening to ourselves affect our japa? And I'm starting to realize more and more that it does. Actually, the cost often is that when we don't listen to ourselves over the long term, it's not, sometimes it affects us in the short term as well, definitely. But in the long term, it definitely affects our japa. And the reason for that is because so just based off of the little exercise that we did of tuning into the body, right? When we feel hungry and we're not paying attention to it, when we're experiencing pain and we're not addressing it, right? All of these things are causing disturbances to not just the body, but also the mind, right? And our focus and our ability to concentrate starts to become hampered. Now, that's just on the bodily level. Now, if we go even deeper into the emotional level of hurts that we're carrying, of unfulfilled desires, of ways in which we treat ourselves that we haven't processed properly, all of that can start to affect our japa. Now, this is the interesting thing, that on one hand, japa, as we hear within our Bhakti Shastras, japa will help us to deal with all of those things on one hand. But it almost feels to me, and this is just my humble experience, and that is, one requires the other. We also have to put in the endeavor that the japa will work on us, but we also have to help. We need to show Krishna that we're trying. So when we become aware, as Prabhupada said, become conscious, then become Krishna conscious, as we start to develop awareness, as we start to try, then Krishna will help us as well. To just say that it's all on Krishna means that we're just giving Krishna service, that we're not actually taking responsibility for ourselves. We also need to take responsibility for ourselves. So it's intertwined. And that is what I would suggest or offer. Now, the second question, could you please remind me of it again? I want to make sure that I understood it properly.
Yeah, it was just the practical ways in terms of how do we start listening to ourselves, or in my case, calming the mind, like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, your mind can be your enemy and it can be your best friend. But if you control it, how do you control it? What is a practical way to start?
Where would you say you struggle most with controlling your mind?
I'm always thinking all the time without fail. Like even when I also struggle to sleep because of that, because I can't settle down because I'm always thinking.
And do you spend a lot of time like at work or with people or on your phone? Do you receive a lot of sensory input all the time?
Yes, I do, definitely.
Okay, you do. So the reason why I ask is that a question like yours, you can't kind of give a blanket response because it's so different for each of us. So based on what you said, perhaps one way is to just start to bring awareness to which sense do I overindulge in? So do I overindulge in the sense of sight? Am I constantly on my phone? Am I constantly on the computer? Is it the sense of sight that's bombarding me with so much sensory information? Or is it the sense of hearing? I'm constantly tuning into a podcast or conversations or, things that are not necessarily spiritually saturated. Of course, if you're listening to Krishna conscious Katha all the time, that's very different. But those things that are leaving impressions in the mind and in the consciousness. And by I would suggest just starting there. Which sense am I feeding too much? And by starting to recognize that, and I'll also be honest, it might be all five. I mean, it can be all five for many of us. But likely it could be the sense of sight, because we're in a pandemic, everything now is virtual, we're always on our phones. So maybe it's all, but it's the sense of sight the most. And from there to see how can I just decrease that stimulation just a little bit and experiment and see. So that might be a practical way to just start.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Snaza, please.
Haribol. So I guess my question is, how do you, in starting to listen deeper to yourself, how do you tell the difference between sort of the different voices or the different experiences? And I guess it's a question of senses, right, that are vying for your attention. Like, how do you tell the difference between the ego trying to be a nuisance and actually what the voice of the soul? Am I making sense?
Totally. It's such a profound question. I'll offer to you what I believe it is His Holiness Sachidananda Swami, but a very deep and advanced practitioner of bhakti once said that 99.9% of the time it's the voice of the ego. You can almost assume most times it's the voice of the ego. It just eliminates so much of the guesswork, and that's how I've operated. the voice of the soul, the voice of the Paramatma is described to be like a whisper. It requires very, very deep listening. The voice of the ego, the voice of the mind, is very loud. It's overwhelming.
Yes, it is.
Right? It's just like, oh my God, you're knocking me off my feet. This is so loud. I don't know how to turn you off. Please stop talking. It's just constantly running. But the voice of the soul, and then also the voice of Paramatma, it tends to be soft. It's again by going inward that we can really begin the process of accessing it. It's becoming comfortable in quiet. And we live in an age of so much distraction through sound. We have to become quiet. And there's and for some, there's a discomfort in quiet. Because we feel like, oh my God, I'll go crazy if I'm quiet, because all I hear is the voice of the ego and the mind. Like, I will literally go crazy, and I can't go crazy. I have too many responsibilities, so I will just keep distracting myself from it. And so that's really a place where the guidance of those who have walked the path before us is just so desperately needed. You know, to be able to share and to say, I'm going crazy. I really want to hear the voice of the soul and the voice of Paramatma, but I'm going crazy. And to hear from their experience, it becomes reassuring. And it's only those, when we start to walk in this direction, it's only those who have walked the path who can really help us. Because to go through it by ourselves can be very difficult and might actually not be beneficial to us even. We need guidance. But we can start off by just increasing a little bit more quiet in our lives. You know, you can't run a marathon. So like, okay, let's just 2 more minutes of quiet, just 2 more minutes today.
Thank you. That's a lovely answer. I love the eliminating the guesswork.
Yeah. Yes, all glories to our teachers and advanced practitioners. Yes. Yeah. All glories, because otherwise I'm like, I'm pretty sure the soul is saying something. No, it's probably the ego. I mean, it's not to say that the soul may not be saying something, or the Paramatma may not be saying something. And often advanced practitioners will also offer that when you see and you hear confirming information from different disparate places, pay attention. Perhaps that's the Paramatma speaking to you. And then you can confirm with those who are more advanced. But the ego's voice is just really loud and kind of obnoxious, honestly. At least mine is. So thank you so much for such an important, profound question. Itu, I know that you had your hand up. I think you might have. Yes, please.
Hi, Krishna. Yes, I did. You may have answered this already with Sinazo's question and your previous discussions, but it's about judging and condemning just that quiet space. How do you deal with that? Because I find I really don't like sitting with myself, because I'm constantly denying how I feel or just rejecting it altogether. Like I shouldn't be feeling this way. So how do you deal with that?
When you're in that space, what do you typically do?
Cry. And try to ignore and distract myself. So I will overindulge whatever sense is dominating at the time. I'm just to ignore and distract myself.
And what happens to you when you ignore and or distract yourself?
It gets worse. The body just feels completely painful. In very familiar spaces, there's a lot of shaking. It's just really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had an experience of being able to simply hear and hold yourself in compassion?
If I have, I can't recall the time.
And have you ever experienced that sense of compassion from someone else?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Perhaps one way of approaching it, and there are probably several, but this is one I can perhaps offer to you, is if it's difficult to do this for ourselves in the beginning, then if we've had the experience of compassion with somebody else, that to, as in the Nectar of Instruction, once again, it says in verse, I want to say three or four, I think three, Dadati Pratigrinati, that one of the loving exchanges amongst practitioners of bhakti is to reveal one's mind in confidence and inquire confidentially. That there is no shame in starting. And often there can perhaps this may come up for you. I know this comes up for me at least, that, well, I'm imposing on somebody, or I should know how to do this. Like, why don't I know how to do this? But and we rarely ask the question, but how are we supposed to know how to do this if we've never been taught, or we've never, we've never been taught. We're just trying to figure it out by ourselves. And to be held in compassion through somebody else, and to repeatedly get that experience, to repeatedly stay in that energy, can help us access that for ourselves. So that might be one way. I'm sure there are many ways, but that might be one way to begin.
Thank you. Yeah.
I hope that's of help. I hope that's helpful.
No, yeah. It did. Thank you very much.
Of course. Okay, our time is coming to an end. So there's two questions. Let's see if we can quickly answer at least part of one question and the other one. So I'll start off with the most recent. Please repeat that: to reveal one's mind in confidence and to inquire confidentially. That's the second part. Yes. And then Hemangi Gopi, you had put in another question: how to stop procrastinating important things. How much time do you have? That is a huge question. And Rajalila Prabhu had said this at the beginning. And she had mentioned that I don't want to say a practitioner, but definitely I have been helped so much by this personality framework known as the Enneagram. And what the Enneagram speaks to is our different natures. That's really what it speaks to. So when you say how to stop procrastinating important things, it really depends on your nature. So the answer for you may be very different than an answer for somebody else. And I would feel inauthentic to even try to answer that question if I didn't get a chance to spend some time with you and get to know you better. So please, this isn't a cop-out, but rather just really in the interest of service, because sometimes I feel like with such really important questions, it's easy to give a blanket answer, but it's actually so individual and so personal, and I would really love to honor that. So I hope that's okay. And happy to talk about it more. And this is how you spell Enneagram. I just put it in the chat. So Yes, if anybody has any questions or anything, I'll also put my email in the chat, and feel free to write to me, and I would love to get to know you better, and if I can be of any service, happy to do that too. Is there time for one more? I feel so terrible. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and my husband so kindly gave me this time to spend with you, and so it's my turn to take care of her. So that's the only reason why I need to leave in probably a minute, because I hear her already asking for me. So please forgive me. Oh, Rajalila Devi, you're on mute.
Yeah, I really want to thank you. I know we don't want Rasaraj to, get in an anxiety. Yeah, that's really wonderful that he took care of her for 2 hours. I'm really grateful. Please let him know.
I will.
And as I was listening to you, I was just really reveling in so many of the beautiful questions, and so much of it is as you were sharing so sweetly, that it's important to be able to give ourselves compassion. And I believe it was Bhavita and a couple others were asking, what are some ways that we can give ourselves compassion? And you mentioned about definitely revealing our mind and confidence to others. However, there are some self-soothing things that you can do with yourself, that you can learn in terms of, maybe in the immediate moment to not react. So one self-soothe that I have found that really you can just do this right in a second is just hug yourself and say, I have so many belief systems. However, I know that Krishna loves me and I am loved. Just like that, just really quickly. And it can shift. It can shift you in just a moment, because, we have so many different core beliefs that we just live our lives by. However, there's one really core belief that we don't often say to ourselves: Krishna, God loves me. And because he loves me, I am lovable. I am so lovable with whatever else is going on. There's always something.
So thank you.
Yeah, but Vrindavan, we got to get you back with the Enneagram. I'm serious about that. Yeah, we're going to do that. Actually, we're getting ready to do a skills series next. We finished the mentorship series, so now we're going to start a skills series in a couple of weeks. And next week, we're going to debrief from this series. And so we'll see, maybe we'll invite you for that skill. Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all so much for just your beautiful hearts and just wanting to, just be so authentic and sincere practitioners of just being a human being and of really trying to love Krishna. Thank you.
Jai Haribol. Offer obeisance to Vrinda. Offer obeisance to Rasanath Prabhu. Tell him we appreciate his service.
I will.
And Jai, I just want to quickly, Namsa,
forgive me.
Is, yes, Haribol. Namsa, thank you so much for being our tech person here today. This was really wonderful. This is one of our beautiful surprises, is that Namsa is here and she's managing everything so nicely. And Namsa will also informed me that we're meeting next week for a debriefing of what's happening here. And then I'll send you a list of this next series and what we will be. And actually, maybe you might want to send me what you would like to hear. Send me a list of what you might want. And then we'll do our best to facilitate those skills. What skills are you interested in learning? Then we'll make sure that we can provide those skills. There are basic skills. For the first 4 weeks, there are some basic skills that I think is important for everyone on this planet to know, and definitely Vaishnavis. And that's the 4 components of compassionate speaking and listening. There are 4 components to that. And so definitely, those are some things that we will share in the beginning. And if there's any other skills or tools that you would like to have, please let us know. And Namsa, you will be let me know, right? Whatever to be share.
I'll do that. Because there were quite a few questions about what the workshop was about, what the skills training workshop was about. So I think you just touched on that it's about the compassionate listening and speaking, and yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, it's really focusing on communication skills, because that's what I see that's really important in terms of developing relationships, whether it's a relationship with our mentors, relationship as a mentee, relationships with our families, whatever. This can be a huge challenge I see in the devotee community. So if we have some basic skills in terms of understanding how to communicate. And like, for example, today, Vrindavan touched on one thing that's really important, is just being able to observe. So in that meditation, we observed our bodies. However, how do we observe from what other people say? What is what are the facts from what someone else may be sharing? This is a skill to really hear, listen to someone and just take out what's really important in what they're saying, because most people just say a lot of different things in one conversation. So anyway, and there's 4 parts to, like I said, to this communication component. And yes, that's something and that's my specialty. That's kind of those 4 skills. I teach those 4 skills no matter what else I'm teaching. I always try to give those 4 skills. So people, yeah. Anyway, if there is anything from anyone, or if not, we will.
Is it possible to get recordings from these calls? I didn't see anywhere that, but I know that every is recorded. So is it possible to get?
Yes, there's one that was not recorded. Somehow inadvertently, we just missed that. That was, I believe, the second one, which was with Krishna, I'm spacing on her name right now. Radha Bhakti, with Radha Bhakti. We missed that one. However, the first, the third, and the fourth recordings we do have, this one now. And so I can arrange for you to get those, Hemangli.
Thanks. Thank you.
And Namsa, perhaps, I'll arrange with you. You can get Savasachi Prabhu to get them to you, and then we can send them out. I also have 3. Well, I don't have this one now, so I have 2.
Okay. We can arrange that.
Okay. Durga Leela, did you have something you were saying?
Hare Krishna, where will it be? Like the one last week with Mother Loka, where will you'll send them out to a general place? Do we have to subscribe to something? How will we find it?
You can go to Heart to Heart. We will put you on that Facebook page. Not Facebook,
but okay.
Or I'll send it to you personally. Okay. I can send it to you personally.
Okay, perfect. I may have. Okay, thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Yeah, I have it on a few other apps that I have it on our Japa. If you're on our Japa, are you on the Japa app where I send Japa out every day? No. Okay, so anyway, I'll make sure that you get it. I'll arrange a place where you can.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yes. So my dear devotees, thank you so very much. Thank you. Hari Pran Priya, thank you for being here with us from Nairobi. Itu, thank you. Snazu K from England, thank you so much. Hemanggi, from Slovenia. Dina from America. We're just so grateful, and I really benefited from all of these presentations. I don't know about you. Yeah, I know you did too, so I'm sure you did. So Namsa, is there anything you would like to share before we close?
No, just thank you so much. And just a reminder that we will have a session next week, a debriefing session. I'm sure there'll be a poster to accommodate that, but it will be casual. So I know some people are very shy with sharing some of these things, and they expressed that, it could be a little tricky. So just come as you are, and we'll have a nice session next week as well. with all your questions. I know we shared during the week about what we just heard, and a lot of realizations come. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much. We appreciated your service so much, and we look forward to seeing all of you next week.
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.